never thought that after 83 years of living, raising children, and standing beside one man for more than half my life, my world could still crumble in a single evening. But it did. And it all started with one phone ringing. It was late, maybe around 9:30 at night. I had just finished knitting by the fireplace, something I do to calm my nerves whenever my arthritis flares up. My husband, Harold, had left earlier that morning on what he called a business trip to Chicago. I didn't think twice about it then. After all, I was the one who had funded the entire trip. Every dime for the flights, the hotel, the so-called meetings, I had wired from my savings. Savings I thought were meant for both of us. That night, the house was unusually quiet. I made myself a cup of chamomile tea and shuffled toward the bedroom, the wooden floor creaking beneath my slippers. That's when I saw it, something sitting at the edge of Harold's dresser. His second phone. He never told me about it. I only knew because once, years back, I had seen him slip a small black device into his jacket pocket when he thought I was asleep. I never asked questions. I told myself it was probably for work or maybe just a backup. But that night the phone lit up, and the name on the screen wasn't office or business partner. It was sweetheart. First I froze. I stood there staring at it, my heart pounding so hard I thought I'd faint. The ringing continued, sharp and demanding in the silence of our bedroom. My hand trembled as I reached for it. For a moment I almost pressed decline. But then, against my better judgment, I slid my finger across the screen and answered. What I saw next shattered my world. A woman appeared on the video call. She was young, no more than 35, with chestnut brown hair and a baby perched on her lap. Behind her, I could see balloons hanging in the living room that spelled out, "Welcome home, Daddy." I couldn't breathe. My mouth went dry. My first instinct was to throw the phone across the room, but my hand just stayed there, frozen. "Harold, is that you?" she asked, squinting at the screen. Then she laughed lightly. "Oh, don't tell me your wife found this phone again. You're always so careless." Her words stabbed me deeper than any knife ever could. "Wife found this phone again," which meant she knew about me. She knew about my existence. And I suddenly realized she wasn't the secret. It was. My knees buckled, and I had to grip the dresser just to stay upright. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but my throat locked up. The woman adjusted the baby on her lap and added with a smile that would haunt me forever, "Tell Harold we can't wait for him to get home. The kids have been counting down the days." The kids, plural. The phone went dark as the call ended. I dropped it onto the bed, and for a long time I just stood there in the quiet room with my chest heaving. My husband, the man I loved, the man I trusted, the man I supported with every ounce of my being, had another family. A younger woman. Children. A life I knew nothing about. I wanted to scream. I wanted to march out into the night and hunt him down. Instead, I crumbled to the floor, clutching my chest. And that's when the thought hit me. The darkest thought I've ever had in my 83 years of life. Maybe it would be easier if I didn't wake up tomorrow. Maybe, just maybe, the pain would end if I ended it myself. I got up slowly, my joints stiff, and walked into the bathroom. The mirror above the sink caught my reflection. My blonde hair now thinned and silvered with age, my eyes red with betrayal. I reached for the cabinet door, my hand shaking as I opened it. Inside sat the small bottle of pain pills I'd been prescribed after my hip surgery. My hand hovered over it. And then something happened. Before I could make the decision, I heard the faint buzz of the phone again from the bedroom. Another call. Another chance to peek into the truth Harold had hidden from me. My fingers curled tighter around the cabinet door. Do I end this now? Or do I answer and hear more lies that would break me completely? I stared at the mirror, my reflection trembling before me, and whispered to myself, "What do I do now?" Because at that moment, I didn't know if I wanted to live through another day of this betrayal. The buzzing from the bedroom dragged me back like a lifeline and a curse all at once. I stood frozen in the bathroom, my hand still hovering over that little orange pill bottle. My chest rose and fell in heavy waves, the betrayal pressing on me like 1,000 pounds of stone. For a brief moment, I wanted the silence forever. No buzzing, no pain, no more pretending. But the noise kept coming. Insistent, sharp, like it refused to let me slip away quietly. With a shaky breath, I left the bathroom and shuffled back to the bedroom. The phone lit up again, and my wrinkled hands trembled as I reached for it. I hesitated. My heart screamed not to, but my curiosity, my need to know, overpowered it. I slid the screen open. This time it wasn't the young woman. It was him. Harold. The face I had known for 57 years stared back at me. His gray hair combed neatly, his blue tie perfectly knotted, the faint lines of age on his forehead, familiar but suddenly foreign. He was sitting in a car, his seatbelt across his chest, the sound of children laughing faintly in the background. "Why are you answering this phone?" His voice came sharp, impatient, not the tender tone I once fell in love with. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. My throat closed up. "Margaret, I asked you a question," he snapped again, his eyes narrowing. "Margaret, that's me. Margaret Harper. I'm 83 years old, a retired schoolteacher, and for the first time in my life I felt like a fool." "Who are they, Harold?" I whispered. My voice cracked under the weight of the words. He glanced away, as if the laughter in the background suddenly grew louder. His jaw tightened. "This isn't the time, Margaret. Hang up the phone." "No." My voice rose higher than I expected. My hands were shaking, but my heart had already cracked wide open. "You lied to me. You said you were on a business trip." "Saw her. I saw the baby." "Harold, what have you done?" For a second, I thought I saw guilt flash across his face. But then, he sighed heavily and said the words that would change everything. "You weren't supposed to find out this way." Felt like my lungs collapsed inside me. My knees nearly buckled again, and I had to sit down on the edge of the bed. He didn't deny it. He didn't even try. You have another family," I whispered, tears blurring my vision. Harold rubbed his temple, clearly annoyed. "Margaret, you're overreacting. Don't make this bigger than it is." "Bigger than it is." My voice broke into a sob. "You've been living a double life, Harold. I spent my savings to send you on this so-called trip, and all the while you're with her, with them." The background grew clearer. A child's voice called, "Daddy, are you coming inside?" And my heart shattered again. Harold turned back to me, his face cold now. "Listen, Margaret. I'll explain when I get back. Don't do anything foolish." The call ended. The screen went black. I sat there staring at my wrinkled hands gripping the phone. My chest heaved, my head spun. I wanted to scream, to throw the phone out the window, to rip every photo of him from the walls. But instead I sat still. Because the truth had finally sunk in. My husband had another life, another home, another family. And I was nothing more than the shadow he left behind. The hours that followed blurred together. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I just sat in that bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying every year of my marriage like an old film reel. I remembered the day we met. I was 26, a young teacher at the local elementary school in Michigan. He was a tall, charming man in a crisp suit who brought his niece to my classroom. His smile had been the kind that disarmed you, the kind that made you believe in fairy tales. I remembered our wedding day. My blonde hair curled neatly under my lace veil, my father walking me down the aisle in the little church by the river. Harold had cried when he saw me. He said he had never seen a woman so beautiful. I believed him. I believed every word. I remembered the sacrifices. How I worked 2 jobs when money got tight. How I stayed home when his business failed, supporting him with my paycheck. How I gave up traveling, gave up luxuries, gave up dreams, because I thought we were in this together. And now I knew he had been giving his love, his time, his laughter to someone else. I buried my face in my hands and wept until my body ached. By morning I looked like a ghost in the mirror. My eyes swollen, my hair messy, my skin pale. I thought again about the pills in the cabinet. Maybe no one would even notice if I slipped away quietly. But then something stirred inside me. A voice I hadn't heard in years. "You're stronger than this, Margaret." Was my own voice. The teacher in me. The woman who raised 2 children, buried one, and survived breast cancer at 59. I wasn't weak. I wasn't some helpless old woman who would crumble because a man betrayed her. I took a deep breath and told myself, not yet. Not like this. But my strength didn't last long. By the afternoon, Harold's betrayal grew heavier. I wanted answers. I needed answers. So I did the one thing I had avoided all night. I opened his second phone. Scrolling through the messages made my hands shake uncontrollably. There were hundreds of them. Photos of the woman, photos of the children, even photos of him holding a baby I never knew existed. And then I saw it. A message from 3 days ago. "Can't wait until you move in with us for good. The kids will be thrilled." Move in. For good. My chest tightened again. He wasn't just sneaking around. He was planning to leave me. After all these years, after everything I gave him. He was preparing to walk out of our marriage and vanish into another home like I never existed. I dropped the phone onto the bed, my vision swimming. My breathing grew shallow, my chest heavy. I thought the pain might kill me right there. And then froze. My head whipped toward the front door. Who could it be? I forced myself up, my legs weak, and shuffled toward the door. Through the peephole I saw something that made my blood run cold. It wasn't the mailman. It wasn't a neighbor. It was the young woman from the video call, standing on my porch with the baby in her arms. I clutched the edge of the doorframe to steady myself as my knees threatened to give way. My heart hammered so loud in my chest. I thought for a second the young woman might hear it through the wood. There she was. Exactly as she had been on the video call. Young, beautiful in that careless way youth allows. Her chestnut brown hair was pulled back in a loose ponytail, her skin glowing with health, her eyes filled with a softness that was almost insulting. She looked like the kind of woman you saw in magazines at the grocery store checkout, the kind I once was but hadn't been in decades. And in her arms, the baby. A little boy, maybe a year old, with Harold's eyes. My husband's eyes. Blue as the summer sky. My breath caught in my throat. I gripped the doorknob so tightly my knuckles turned white. I didn't want to open the door. I didn't want her to know I existed beyond being a name, an obstacle, an inconvenience. But my trembling hand betrayed me. Before I could stop myself, the lock clicked. The door creaked open. "Hello," she said softly, tilting her head. For a moment she looked uncertain, almost kind. And then her expression shifted. Recognition, like she'd seen me before. "You're Margaret." Hearing my name in her mouth made me want to collapse. It wasn't just that she knew who I was. It was the familiarity, the casualness. Like she had rehearsed this moment. "Yes," I managed, my voice barely a whisper. She adjusted the baby on her hip, rocking him gently as his little hand reached for her necklace. "I didn't mean to intrude, but Harold said you might find out soon. I thought, maybe it's better if we talk face to face." Her words slammed into me. Harold said. Harold planned this. My husband knew this day would come, and instead of shielding me from this humiliation, he prepared her for it. "Why are you here?" I asked, my voice sharp now, rising with the rage bubbling inside me. She took a small step forward into my doorway. The nerve of it. "I just thought it was time that you knew the truth. I'm Emily. This is Thomas." She kissed the baby's head as if to prove he was real. Harold's son. Harold's son. The words cut into me like broken glass. My vision blurred, but I forced myself to stay upright. I would not fall apart in front of this girl, not here, not yet. I stepped back, gesturing stiffly. "Come in," I said, though every fiber of my being screamed to slam the door in her face. She walked in, carrying the baby like a trophy, and sat on my sofa as if it belonged to her. My sofa. The one Harold and I bought 40 years ago after saving for months. I sat across from her, gripping my knees so hard they hurt. The baby giggled, reaching out to her cheek, And for a fleeting second my heart softened. I had been a mother once too. I knew the bond, the innocence of a child who asked for nothing but love. But then the truth returned. That baby was the product of betrayal. Emily looked at me directly, her eyes calm but determined. I know this must be hard for you. I didn't want to hurt you, Margaret. I really didn't. But Harold, he loves us too. And he promised me he'd make it right. Make it right. I let out a bitter laugh that sounded more like a cough. Make it right. After 57 years of marriage, after I gave him everything I had. He wants to make it right with you. Her face softened. I know it sounds cruel, but you have to understand. He's happier with us. He feels young again, alive. You've had your time with him. Isn't it fair that he gets to choose happiness now? Her words stabbed me deeper than Harold's silence ever could. You've had your time. Like love had an expiration date. Like I was nothing more than a placeholder until someone younger came along. Memories rushed back like a flood. The nights I stayed up nursing Harold when he was sick with pneumonia. The day I pawned my mother's wedding ring to pay his debts when his business collapsed. The sacrifices I made. Working late nights, mending his shirts, keeping food on the table when he couldn't. I had given my entire life to him. And this girl dared to sit in my living room and tell me my time was up. I leaned forward, my voice trembling with rage. Do you know what I gave up for him? Do you know what it cost me to stand by his side all these years? I buried a child with that man. I watched my dreams wither because I thought love was worth it. And now you tell me it's fair that he leaves me to rot so he can feel alive with you. Emily shifted uncomfortably but held her ground. I'm not trying to replace you, Margaret. But Harold loves us. He wants to build a future with Thomas. That's why he asked me to come. Froze. He asked you to come. She nodded. He said you might not understand at first. But once you see how happy we are, you'll accept it. Maybe even let go. My body went cold. He hadn't just lied. He hadn't just betrayed me. He had sent her here, to my home, to prepare me for my own replacement. The baby cooed, his little blue eyes blinking up at me. For a moment, I saw Harold's face in his. The same eyes that once looked at me with love. My throat tightened. I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up so fast my knees cracked. Get out, I said, my voice low but fierce. Emily looked startled. Margaret, please. I said get out. My voice shook the walls. Take that child and leave my home. Now. She stood slowly, bouncing the baby to calm him. Her eyes softened, almost pitying. You can't stop what's coming. Harold has made his choice. She walked to the door, her heels clicking against my hardwood floor, and paused before stepping out. You should prepare yourself. He's filing the papers soon. The door closed behind her, leaving me in silence. My chest heaved, my hands shook, my whole body trembled with fury and despair. Filing the papers. Divorce. At 83 years old. I stumbled to the sofa, collapsing into it. The room spun around me. My breaths came shallow, ragged. My entire life, everything I thought I knew, was gone. And then, just as I thought I couldn't bear any more, the front door opened again. I looked up, my heart in my throat. It wasn't Emily. It was Harold. Standing in the doorway, suitcase in hand. His face hard and unreadable. The moment Harold stepped through that door, it was as if the air in the house thickened. I couldn't breathe. The sound of the suitcase wheels scraping against the wooden floor was deafening in the silence. He closed the door behind him with a slow, deliberate push. His eyes locking onto mine. For a second, neither of us spoke. We just stood there, two strangers who had shared a bed for nearly 6 decades. Margaret, he said finally. His voice flat, almost businesslike. I swallowed hard, my throat raw from the shouting earlier. So it's true, I whispered. My voice cracked. Everything. His jaw tightened. You weren't supposed to find out like this. I laughed bitterly, the sound catching in my chest. Oh, so I was supposed to die without knowing. Spend the rest of my days waiting for you to come back from business trips while you played house with her. He didn't flinch. That stung more than any slap could have. I remembered the man I married. The one who cried when he saw me in my wedding dress. The one who whispered promises on our honeymoon under a sky full of stars. That man wasn't standing in front of me anymore. Instead, this man looked at me like I was a burden he was forced to deal with. "Margaret, don't make this harder than it has to be," he said. Harder. The word made my blood boil. I stood slowly, gripping the armrest of the sofa for support. My body was frail, my joints stiff, but in that moment rage gave me strength. "Harder than what, Harold?" My voice rose. "Harder than spending 57 years giving you everything. Harder than working 2 jobs to pay your debts when your business failed. Harder than pawning my mother's wedding ring so we could eat. Harder than burying our child together and still staying by your side when you fell apart." For the first time I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Guilt, maybe. But it was gone as quickly as it came. "I didn't ask you to do all that," he said coldly. The words hit me like a blow to the chest. Didn't ask. My knees nearly gave out, but I forced myself to stay upright. "You didn't have to ask," I snapped. "I did it because I loved you. Because that's what marriage is. Sacrifice, loyalty, commitment. Things you clearly know nothing about anymore." He sighed, running a hand through his thinning gray hair. "Margaret, I'm tired. I don't want to fight with you. I came here to make things clear." I narrowed my eyes. "Clear?" He set the suitcase down and straightened his tie like he was about to walk into a meeting. "I've spoken to my lawyer. I'm filing for divorce. Emily and we're building a life together. She deserves that. The children deserve that." The room spun. My hands clutched the sofa for balance. Divorce. 83. After 57 years of marriage. I felt the blood drain from my face. "And what about me?" I whispered. Harold looked at me, his expression unreadable. "You'll be fine. You have the house." I laughed bitterly again, tears spilling down my cheeks. The house. This house was built on my father's land. Paid for with my inheritance. Don't you dare tell me you're leaving me with what was already mine. His lips pressed into a thin line. "The accounts will be split. Emily and the children. Don't you dare say her name in my home." I screamed, the sound ripping through my chest. My whole body trembled, but my voice didn't waver. For the first time, Harold's calm mask cracked. He glared at me. "I'm not going to apologize for wanting happiness, Margaret. You're old. You can't give me what she can. She makes me feel alive again." Alive again. The words burned into me. Was I death to him now? Was I nothing more than a graveyard he wanted to leave behind? I sank back into the sofa, my body heavy, my heart shattered into pieces. My mind drifted back to the beginning, to the days when we were young, when we had nothing but each other. I remembered sitting on the porch in summer, drinking lemonade, laughing until the fireflies came out. I remembered the way he used to look at me like I was the only woman in the world. Where had that man gone? When had he died? The silence between us grew thick again. I stared at him, my tears blurring my vision, and whispered, "Why wasn't I enough?" He looked away. He didn't answer. And that silence was worse than any truth he could have given me. Finally, he cleared his throat. "The lawyer will contact you. I'll be moving my things next week." I felt something inside me snap. Something deep, something that had held me together all these years despite every hardship, every sacrifice. It was gone now. "Get out," I said, my voice low but firm. Harold frowned. "Margaret, get out of my house." I screamed, my voice echoing through the walls. For a moment he looked stunned. Then his expression hardened, and without another word, he picked up his suitcase and walked toward the door. But before he could step outside, I said the words I never thought would leave my mouth. "If you walk out that door, Harold, don't bother coming back. Not for clothes, not for money, not for a single thing. You're dead to me." He froze for just a second, his hand on the doorknob. Then, without turning back, he opened the door and stepped into the night. The silence that followed was suffocating. My chest heaved. My body shook. I felt like the walls were closing in. And then my phone buzzed. Not his secret phone. My phone. With trembling hands I picked it up. A text message glowed on the screen. It was from an unknown number. "Mrs. Harper, I think you should know. Your husband isn't who you think he is. Call me immediately. I have proof." I stared at the screen, my heart racing. Who was this? What proof? Hadn't I already seen enough? But deep inside something told me this was bigger. Much bigger than I realized. I sat there staring at the glowing screen in my hands, the message burning into my tired eyes. "Mrs. Harper, I think you should know. Your husband isn't who you think he is. Call me immediately. I have proof." At 83 years old, I thought I'd seen it all. Wars, deaths, births, betrayals. But this was something I couldn't even wrap my mind around. My hands trembled as I set the phone down on the coffee table. My heart pounded in my chest, echoing in my ears. Was it a scam? A cruel prank? Or was it the final nail in the coffin of the man I once thought I knew better than anyone else? I leaned back into the sofa, closing my eyes. My body ached from the shouting, the crying, the sheer weight of grief pressing down on me. I thought of Harold's face when he said those words. "You're old. You can't give me what she can." I thought of Emily standing in this very room, cradling his child like a flag planted in enemy territory. I thought of the 57 years of my life that I had given away freely, believing in promises that turned to ash. And now, another shadow. Another secret. I opened my eyes again. The phone still buzzed faintly in my hand. Whoever this was, they were waiting. I told myself to ignore it, to throw the phone away, to shut it all out. But something deep inside me stirred, a voice I hadn't heard in years. It was the voice of the woman I used to be before Harold broke me down. Strong, determined, fierce. My hand stopped trembling. I pressed the call button. The line rang twice before a man's voice answered. Rough, cautious. "Mrs. Harper." "Yes," I whispered. My throat was dry. "Who is this?" There was a pause. Then, "My name is Daniel Price. I used to work with your husband." I frowned. "Work with him? Harold's been retired for years." Daniel let out a bitter laugh. "Retired? That's what he told you." My stomach turned. "What are you saying? I shouldn't be telling you this over the phone," he said quickly. "But Harold isn't who you think he is. He's been hiding more than just that second family. He's been moving money. A lot of money. Out of your accounts. Into hers. And into places you don't even know about." I felt my breath catch. My chest tightened. "No. That's not possible. Check the accounts. I would know." "Would you?" His tone was sharp. "Do you really think a man who kept another family for years wouldn't know how to hide bank statements? Shell companies. Fake investments." I clutched the phone tighter. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might give out. "Why are you telling me this?" I demanded. "Because I saw what he did to my sister," Daniel said quietly. "He ruined her. Promised her the world, drained her dry, and left her with nothing. When I saw what he was doing to you, I couldn't stay silent. You deserve to know." My head spun. I tried to process his words, but it was like my brain couldn't catch up. Money. Shell companies. Lies layered on lies. "Meet me tomorrow," Daniel continued. "I have the documents. Proof. But we can't talk here. He has eyes everywhere." I laughed bitterly. "He has eyes everywhere. Harold. He's an 86-year-old man, not some criminal mastermind." Silence. Then Daniel said, "That's what you think." The line went dead. I sat there, staring at the phone in disbelief. My heart raced. My hands shook. I felt like the walls were closing in. That night I didn't sleep. My mind was a battlefield, every thought clashing against the other. Could it be true? Could Harold have stolen from me on top of everything else? Had every sacrifice I made been for nothing but to fund his secret life? I thought back to the days when we struggled. When I worked nights at the diner after teaching all day, just to make sure the mortgage was paid. When I pawned my mother's ring to cover Harold's debts. When I emptied my savings to pay for his so-called business trips. All that time I believed we were a team. That we were fighting together. But now I saw it. Maybe I had been fighting alone. I walked into the bathroom again, staring at the pills in the cabinet. The thought returned dark and heavy. But something inside me shifted. Not tonight. If Harold thought I would roll over and die, he was wrong. If Emily thought she could sit in my living room and tell me my time was up, she was mistaken. I wasn't dead yet. I closed the cabinet and whispered to my reflection, "You're stronger than this, Margaret. You've survived worse." The next morning I dressed slowly. I put on a blue blouse and a pair of slacks, combed my thinning blonde hair as best I could, and dabbed a little powder on my cheeks to cover the hollowness beneath my eyes. I looked tired, older than I had in years, but behind the wrinkles there was a spark. I tucked the secret phone into my purse, grabbed my cane and stepped outside. The autumn air was crisp, the leaves crunching beneath my slippers. I was going to meet Daniel Price. But as I reached the gate I froze. There, parked across the street, was Harold's car. And inside, Harold himself watching me. His eyes were cold, his face hard. My blood ran cold. He knew. I stood there frozen, one hand gripping the iron gate, the other clutching my cane so tight my knuckles turned white. The morning sun glared off the windshield of Harold's car, but there was no mistaking his face. His eyes were locked on me, cold and unflinching. For a moment we just stared at each other across the quiet street. The autumn wind rustled the leaves, but all I could hear was the hammering of my heart. Slowly the car door opened. Harold stepped out. His gray suit pressed sharp, as if he had dressed deliberately to remind me of the man he once pretended to be. He shut the door softly, too softly, and walked toward me. "What are you doing, Margaret?" His voice was calm, but underneath I heard the warning. I tightened my grip on the cane. "Going out," I said flatly. His eyes narrowed. "Out where? That's none of your business anymore." The words left my mouth before I had time to weigh them, but the way his face hardened told me they struck deep. For decades I had been quiet, compliant, patient. That Margaret had died the night Emily walked into my living room. "You shouldn't be wandering around alone," he said, his voice low, controlled. "At your age, it's dangerous." I let out a bitter laugh. Dangerous. More dangerous than marrying a man who lies and cheats for half his life. More dangerous than funding your second family with my savings. "Don't you dare lecture me about danger, Harold." His jaw twitched. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I know you've been snooping. You answered my phone. You've been talking to people you shouldn't." My chest tightened. Did he already know about Daniel? I raised my chin, refusing to show fear. "And what if I have?" For the first time his calm cracked. His voice sharpened. "You don't know what you're getting into, Margaret. You're old. You're fragile. And if you keep digging, you're going to regret it." The words sent a chill down my spine. This wasn't just about adultery anymore. There was something darker. Something Harold was desperate to keep buried. I stepped closer to the gate, meeting his eyes with all the strength I could muster. "I may be old, Harold, but I'm not stupid. And I'm not afraid of you anymore." We stood there, locked in silence. Finally he sighed, that old rehearsed sigh he used to use whenever I tried to argue with him, back when I thought he was just a tired man, not a liar. "Go back inside, Margaret," he said. "Don't make this ugly." I didn't move. I stared at him, my grip tightening on the cane. "You already made it ugly. 57 years ago when you promised me forever and handed it to someone else." For a split second I thought he might raise his hand. Instead he turned on his heel and walked back to the car. The tires screeched as he pulled away, the sound echoing down the street. I stood at the gate, trembling. My knees felt weak, my chest heavy. But inside me something was alive again. A fire I hadn't felt in years. He was hiding more. I knew it now. And I wasn't going to let him bury me along with his secrets. The meeting with Daniel weighed on me all day. Every sound outside made me jump. Every car that drove by, every phone ring, every shadow across the blinds. But the more fear tried to press in, the stronger my resolve grew. That afternoon I called the number again. Daniel answered immediately. "Mrs. Harper." "Yes," I said, my voice shaking. "He saw me. He knows something." Daniel was silent for a moment. Then he said, "Listen carefully. Don't confront him again. Not yet. He's dangerous when cornered. I'll bring the documents to you tonight instead." "Tonight?" I whispered. My pulse quickened. "Yes. Stay inside. Keep the doors locked. Don't let him know I was there." I agreed, my heart racing. After we hung up, I locked every door and window in the house. The silence pressed down on me, broken only by the creaks of the old floorboards as I paced from room to room. My mind drifted again, back to the years I spent believing Harold's every word. I remembered the nights he stayed out late, claiming he had meetings. I remembered the trips I paid for, thinking they were for business. I remembered the money I could never quite account for, but trusted him when he said it went to expenses. All those years I told myself marriage was built on trust. But now I saw it clearly. He had built a prison around me with lies, and I had walked into it willingly. No more. Night fell. The house was quiet except for the ticking of the old grandfather clock in the hallway. I sat by the front window, the curtains drawn just enough for me to see the street. My cane rested against the chair, my purse beside me. Every car that passed made my heart leap. Every shadow made me tense. And then I saw it. A figure approaching the porch. Daniel. He was younger than I expected, maybe in his 40s, with sharp features and a heavy coat. He glanced around nervously before knocking softly on the door. I opened it just enough to let him in, then locked it quickly behind him. "Mrs. Harper," he said, his voice low. "I don't have much time. If he finds out I'm here." "Show me," I interrupted, my voice sharper than I intended. He nodded and pulled a thick envelope from his coat. He set it on the table, sliding out papers, bank statements, property deeds, transfers I didn't recognize. "This," he said, pointing to one, "is an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Millions moved in over the last 15 years. Your name should be on these accounts, but it isn't." He transferred everything into Emily's. My chest constricted. "Millions." Daniel nodded grimly. "And this?" He pulled another paper. "Shell companies. Businesses that don't exist. He's been funneling your money through them. On paper you're broke." Broke. The word hit me harder than any betrayal yet. I had lived carefully, saved diligently, worked until my bones ached, only to discover my entire life's security was gone. My hands shook as I held the papers. "Why are you helping me?" I whispered. Daniel's eyes softened. "Because I saw what he did to my sister. He can't keep getting away with this." I nodded slowly, tears burning my eyes. For the first time in days I felt something new, control. Proof. A weapon. But before I could speak, a sound shattered the moment. The front door rattled violently. My blood turned to ice. A voice bellowed through the wood. "Margaret! Open this door right now." "Harold." He was back. Daniel's face went pale. He shoved the papers back into the envelope and pressed it into my hands. "Hide this. Now." I stumbled toward the hallway, my heart pounding, as the door shook again under Harold's fists. "Margaret," he roared. "I know he's in there." I froze in the hallway, clutching the envelope to my chest, the sound of my husband's rage shaking the walls. And in that moment I knew. This was no longer just about betrayal. This was survival. The pounding on the door rattled the entire frame. I clutched the envelope to my chest so tight I could feel my heartbeat thudding against it. Daniel motioned with frantic hands, whispering, "Hide it. Hide it now." I stumbled into the hallway, my cane clattering against the floorboards. My legs trembled, but I forced myself toward the linen closet at the end of the hall. With shaky fingers, I shoved the envelope beneath a stack of old blankets and closed the door softly, praying Harold wouldn't think to look there. Another bang shook the house. "Margaret!" Harold's voice roared through the door. "I know you're in there. Open it before I break it down." Daniel grabbed my arm. "Don't let him know I'm here," he whispered urgently. "If he sees me, he'll know you have the proof." My throat tightened. "Where will you go?" He glanced around the room and pointed toward the back door. "If I can slip out the kitchen, maybe he won't see me." But before he could move, the front door crashed open with a sickening crack. The wood splintered, the lock flying loose. Harold stormed into the living room. His face twisted with rage, his chest heaving. "Margaret!" he bellowed, his eyes scanning the room. Froze. Daniel ducked behind the sofa in one swift motion. My breath caught, terrified Harold would hear the sound. "Why was the door locked?" Harold demanded, stepping further inside. His gaze snapped toward me, narrowing. "Who were you talking to?" I gripped my cane tightly, forcing my voice to stay steady. "No one." He took a step closer, his shoes heavy against the hardwood. "Don't lie to me, Margaret. You saw him. That man, Daniel. He was here." My chest constricted. He knew. "There's no one here," I said quickly, praying my trembling voice wouldn't betray me. Harold's eyes scanned the room. His nostrils flared. He was like a wolf sniffing out prey. "Where is he?" he barked. "Where's the envelope?" I felt my knees weaken, but I held my ground. "What envelope?" The silence that followed was thick. He took another step, so close now I could smell the bitter scent of his aftershave. The same aftershave I once bought for him every Christmas. "You think you can outsmart me," he hissed. "You think at 83 years old you're going to beat me at my own game?" For a moment I saw it, the man he truly was. Not the charming husband I had once adored, not the devoted partner I believed in, but a predator, ruthless, cold, capable of anything. I steadied my cane, planting it firmly against the floor. My voice came out stronger than I expected. "You've already lost, Harold." His eyes narrowed. "What did you just say?" "You heard me," I said, surprising myself. "You may have stolen my money. You may have lied to me for years. But you don't own me. Not anymore." His jaw clenched, fury flashing in his eyes. For a terrifying second, I thought he might raise his hand against me. But then a sound shattered the moment. The creak of a floorboard. Harold's head whipped toward the sofa. Daniel froze, halfway crouched. In an instant, Harold lunged forward, yanking Daniel up by the collar. "You!" he snarled, his voice dripping with venom. "What did you tell her?" Daniel struggled, his face red. "Let me go." Harold's grip tightened. "You think you can come into my house and turn my wife against me? Your wife deserves the truth." Daniel spat. The words echoed in the room. For a moment, Harold's eyes flickered with rage so intense I feared he might snap Daniel's neck right there. "Stop!" cried, stepping forward. My cane shook in my hands. "Harold, let him go." But Harold only tightened his grip, his knuckles white. "You have no idea what you've done," he growled. "No idea what you're dealing with." I felt my heart pounding, my vision blurring with tears. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was violence. And if I didn't act, someone could die. Summoning every ounce of strength left in my frail body, I raised my cane and slammed it down hard against Harold's arm. He let out a roar of pain, releasing Daniel. The younger man stumbled back, gasping for air. For a split second, Harold's stunned eyes met mine. Fury burned there, darker than anything I had ever seen. "You'll regret that, Margaret," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You'll regret it for the rest of your life." Then he turned and stormed out the door, slamming it so hard the walls shook. Silence fell. The only sound was Daniel's ragged breathing and the pounding of my heart. He turned to me, his face pale. "Are you all right?" I nodded weakly, though my body trembled. "He's dangerous," I whispered. "More dangerous than I ever imagined." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Then we need to move fast. Before he strikes again." I stared at the envelope hidden in the closet, my chest heavy. For the first time, I realized this wasn't just about saving myself. This was about exposing Harold for everything he was. But as I turned back to Daniel, I froze. Through the shattered front door, headlights flashed. Another car pulled up in front of the house. Emily stepped out, holding the baby. And behind her, 2 men in dark suits followed. The headlights cut across my living room like searchlights. I stood frozen near the broken front door, clutching my cane while Daniel stiffened beside me. My heart pounded so loud I thought the entire street might hear it. Emily stepped out first, the baby bundled against her chest. She looked different from when she visited earlier. Less gentle, less soft. Her eyes burned with determination, like she had a role to play and no choice but to see it through. Behind her came 2 tall men in dark suits, their faces unreadable, their strides purposeful. They weren't neighbors. They weren't friends. They were the kind of men you knew instinctively to fear. Emily adjusted the baby and walked straight toward the open door. She didn't even hesitate as she crossed the threshold, as though this were her home and not mine. "Margaret," she said coolly, her voice sharper now. "We need to talk." I tightened my grip on the cane. "I told you once already. You don't belong in my house." Her lips curved into a smirk. "That's where you're wrong. Harold says this house will belong to us soon. I thought maybe it'd be easier if you started accepting that now." The men followed her inside, their eyes scanning the room with the alertness of wolves. Daniel shifted beside me, his jaw tight, but he didn't move. "Who's this?" Emily asked, glancing at Daniel. I opened my mouth, but Daniel answered first. "A friend." Emily's brows arched. "Funny. Harold didn't mention you had friends." The words stung more than they should have. For years, Harold had kept me isolated, convincing me I didn't need anyone but him. Maybe she was right. Maybe I didn't have friends left. But tonight, Daniel was the only ally I had. "What do you want, Emily?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. She shifted the baby to her hip and gave me a long, cold look. "I want you to stop fighting. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Harold belongs with us now. You've had your years, Margaret. Let him go." The nerve of her words nearly sent me over the edge. Let him go. As if 57 years of sacrifice, loyalty, and love could be tossed aside like last week's newspaper. "And what happens to me?" asked my voice low. Emily's smile turned cruel. "You'll be fine. Maybe a little lonely. Maybe a little broke. But you'll survive." Her words hung in the air like poison. I took a slow breath, forcing down the rage boiling in my chest. "You think you've won, don't you?" She didn't answer, but the look in her eyes said everything. The baby let out a soft cry, and Emily rocked him gently, almost mockingly, as if to remind me Harold had already replaced me, even in motherhood. Then, one of the suited men stepped forward. His voice was deep, commanding. "Where is it?" My chest tightened. "Where is what?" "The envelope," he said flatly. "Hand it over." My blood ran cold. Harold must have told them. He knew Daniel brought me something, even if he didn't know where I hid it. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said quickly, praying my voice sounded convincing. The man's eyes narrowed. He took another step closer. "Don't play games with us, Mrs. Harper. You're not in a position to lie." Daniel shifted, stepping slightly in front of me. "Back off," he warned, his voice firm. The man glared at him, then looked back at me. "Last chance. Give us the envelope." I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stay calm. Inside, terror clawed at my chest, but I knew one thing. If I gave them the envelope, everything was over. Harold would win. My life, my home, my future gone. So I shook my head. I don't have it. The man's jaw clenched. He turned to Emily, who gave a subtle nod. Then, without another word, he began to search the room. Drawers slammed. Cushions were tossed aside. Cabinets banged open. My home, the place I had built with my hands and heart, was being ransacked before my eyes. I stood frozen, tears stinging my eyes, but I forced myself not to move, not to give away the hiding place. Daniel leaned close to me, whispering, "Stay calm. Don't let them see you panic." I nodded faintly, though every muscle in my body screamed with fear. Minutes passed like hours as the men tore through the room. Finally, one of them approached the hallway. My heart stopped. The linen closet. I gripped my cane, praying silently, "Please, God, don't let him find it. Please." The man opened the closet door. My breath caught. He rummaged through the shelves, tossing aside towels and blankets. His hand hovered dangerously close to the stack where I had hidden the envelope. Then he stopped. "Nothing here," he muttered, slamming the door shut. Relief flooded me so powerfully my knees nearly buckled. The men returned to Emily, shaking their heads. She frowned, clearly frustrated, but she didn't press further. Instead, she looked at me with that same cold smirk. "It doesn't matter. Harold always gets what he wants. You can't hide the truth forever." She adjusted the baby, turned on her heel, and walked toward the door. The men followed, their presence as heavy as shadows. But just before leaving, Emily paused. She looked back at me, her eyes glittering. "Enjoy your last days here, Margaret. Because soon, this house won't be yours anymore." The door shut behind them, leaving me in silence. I let out a shaky breath, collapsing onto the sofa. My body trembled, my chest heaved, but I had survived. Daniel sat beside me, his voice low. "That was close." I nodded, clutching my cane. "Too close." I stared at the linen closet, my heart still pounding. The envelope was safe for now. But as I looked around my ransacked home, I realized something. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was war. And Harold had no idea that after 83 years of playing the quiet, loyal wife, I had finally learned how to fight. But before I could even catch my breath, my phone buzzed again. New message. From Harold. "If you don't give me what I want, Margaret, you'll regret it. Tonight." I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. And in that moment I knew, the real battle was only beginning. The glow of the phone lit up my trembling hands as I read Harold's message again. "If you don't give me what I want, Margaret, you'll regret it. Tonight." Tonight. The word echoed in my head like a ticking clock. My chest tightened as though the walls of the house were closing in. For decades, I had seen Harold as my protector. Now he was the threat lurking outside my door. I set the phone on the coffee table, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. Daniel leaned forward, his brows furrowed. "What did he say?" I swallowed hard. My throat felt like sandpaper. "He said, if I don't give him the envelope, I'll regret it. Tonight." Daniel cursed under his breath. "He won't stop, Mrs. Harper. Men like him never do. But we have the proof now. If we get it into the right hands." I raised my hand to silence him. "Not yet. Not yet." Daniel stared at me like I'd lost my mind. I shifted slowly on the sofa, leaning back as exhaustion pressed into my bones. "If we go too fast, he'll spin it. He'll twist the truth, just like he's twisted my life for 57 years. I've lived with that man long enough to know. He's clever. Too clever." Daniel shook his head. "And you think waiting is safer?" "No," I whispered, staring at the broken front door, the shadows stretching across the floor. "I think waiting is necessary. But only until I can strike hard enough that he can't crawl back." For a moment, silence filled the room. Daniel studied me, his eyes softening. I wasn't sure if he saw me as brave or foolish. Maybe both. But deep inside, I knew something he didn't. I had spent decades as Harold's shadow. Quiet. supportive, sacrificing. That made him underestimate me. He thought old age made me weak, fragile, disposable. He had no idea that quiet could be a weapon. The hours passed slowly. Every sound outside made me tense. A car passing, the creak of the floorboards, the ticking of the grandfather clock. My nerves were frayed, but I stayed awake. At one point, Daniel suggested I rest. "I'll keep watch," he offered. I shook my head. "This is my house. My fight. If Harold comes, I'll face him myself." But inside, fear gnawed at me. Memories played like ghosts in the corners of my mind. I remembered our honeymoon, when Harold held me by the ocean and promised me forever. I remembered the nights I stayed awake worrying about bills while he slept soundly beside me. I remembered the baby we lost, the grief that nearly crushed us, and how I believed his arms were the only thing keeping me together. Now I saw it all clearly. His arms hadn't held me. They had trapped me. And tonight, I wasn't going to be trapped anymore. It was just past midnight when I heard it. The crunch of gravel outside. I stiffened, gripping my cane. Daniel moved to the window, peering through the gap in the curtain. His voice dropped. "It's him." My chest constricted. "Alone?" Daniel hesitated. "No. He's got 2 men with him. Same ones from earlier." My breath caught. The walls of my house suddenly felt too thin, too fragile. My sanctuary had become a battlefield. The knock came next. Low. Deliberate. Bang, bang, bang. "Margaret!" Harold's voice boomed through the door. "Open up. We're ending this tonight." I gripped my cane tighter, my palms sweating. Daniel leaned toward me. "We should call the police." I shook my head. "No, not yet. Not until I know they'll believe me." Harold's voice grew sharper. "I know you have it, Margaret. Envelope. Hand it over, and maybe I'll let you live out the rest of your days in peace. Keep it and, well, don't say I didn't warn you." The menace in his tone sent chills down my spine. For years, I had lived in fear of losing him. Tonight, I realized I was in fear of surviving him. Daniel reached for his phone anyway, but before he could dial, the front door shook violently. Harold was trying to force it open. I stood slowly, my knees aching, but my resolve firm. "Hide," I whispered to Daniel. "What?" "Hide," I repeated louder this time. "If he finds you with me, he'll know I'm not alone. We need one of us free if this goes wrong." Reluctantly, Daniel slipped into the back room, leaving me standing alone in the dim light of the living room. The door crashed open. Harold stormed in, flanked by the 2 men. His face was twisted with rage, his eyes wild. He looked less like the man I had married and more like a stranger, a predator. "There you are," he said coldly, his eyes narrowing on me. "Now, where is it?" I raised my chin, gripping my cane like a shield. "You're not welcome here, Harold." He laughed bitterly. "This is my house too." "No," I said firmly. "This house was bought with my inheritance. My father's land. My name is on the deed. You're nothing more than a guest I've tolerated for 57 years. His face darkened, his jaw tightening. "Don't play games, Margaret. Hand it over." "I don't have it." He stepped closer, his men flanking him like shadows. "Last chance." My heart pounded, but I forced my voice to stay steady. "And what if I don't?" For a moment, silence. Then Harold's lips curled into a cruel smile. "Then I'll take everything anyway." He nodded at one of the men, who stepped toward the hallway. My chest tightened. He was heading straight for the closet. Panic surged through me. I had to act. With every ounce of strength in my body, I raised my cane and slammed it against the floor. The sound cracked like thunder in the room. "Enough!" I shouted, my voice echoing through the house. "You think you've already won, Harold. But you don't know me anymore. You don't know what I've hidden. You don't know who I've spoken to. And if you so much as touch that closet door, your entire empire will come crashing down before the sun rises." The room froze. Harold's eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering. Bluffing, he muttered. But for the first time I saw it, the faintest flicker of doubt in his eyes. And then, before anyone could move, the sharp wail of sirens filled the night air, growing louder, closer, until red and blue lights flashed through the broken doorway. Police. Daniel must have called them after all. Harold's face drained of color as the sirens stopped right outside. I gripped my cane tighter, my heart racing. The war wasn't over. But tonight, the battlefield had shifted. The red and blue lights danced across the walls of my broken living room, flashing like fire in the night. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. Harold stood frozen in the doorway, his 2 men stiff beside him. The faint wail of the siren faded as car doors slammed outside. Moments later, 2 officers stepped in, their flashlights cutting through the room. The taller one, his face stern beneath his cap, surveyed the mess. The broken door, the overturned furniture, Harold's looming figure, and me, clutching my cane with trembling hands. "What's going on here?" the officer demanded. Harold moved first. He stepped forward, his voice smooth, his tone rehearsed. "Officers, thank God you're here. My wife, she's not well. She's confused, paranoid. She's been letting strangers into our home. I'm trying to protect her, but she's making it impossible." His lies spilled out effortlessly, like silk spun from poison. The officer's flashlight turned to me. "Ma'am, is this true?" I felt my chest tighten. For decades, Harold had twisted reality until I doubted my own mind. How many times had he told me I was imagining things? How many times had he painted himself as the calm, rational one while I was hysterical? "Not tonight." "No," I said, my voice firm despite the tremor in my chest. "He's lying." Harold's jaw tightened, but his mask stayed in place. "Margaret, please. Don't embarrass yourself." I gripped my cane tighter, lifting my chin. "Embarrass myself? Harold, you embarrassed me the day you promised me forever and handed it to someone else. You embarrassed me when you drained my savings for your second family. And you embarrassed yourself when you thought I'd die quietly without ever knowing the truth." The room went still. Even the officers exchanged glances. Harold's mask cracked slightly, but he recovered quickly. "She's delusional," he said smoothly. "She doesn't know what she's talking about." That's when Daniel stepped out from the back room. "She's not delusional. She's telling the truth." The officers turned sharply, flashlights on him. Harold's face drained of color. "Who are you?" the officer asked. "My name is Daniel Price," he said firmly. "I used to work with Harold. I've seen what he's been doing. And I brought proof." My heart raced as Daniel looked at me, nodding slightly. "Understood." It was time. With slow, deliberate steps, I moved toward the linen closet. My knees ached, my body trembled, but I refused to show weakness. I opened the door, reached under the blankets, and pulled out the thick envelope. My hands shook as I held it up. "This," I said, my voice clear, "is the truth." The officers stepped forward, taking the envelope carefully. They flipped through the pages, their brows furrowing as they read. Bank statements, property deeds, offshore accounts, proof of years of deception. One of the officers looked up, his expression hard. "Mr. Harper, can you explain this?" For the first time, Harold faltered. His smooth voice stammered. That's private business. Investments. Nothing illegal." Daniel stepped forward. "Check the names on those accounts. They're not Margaret's. They're not even his. They're in Emily's." "Emily." As if on cue, the door creaked again. She stood there on the porch, the baby in her arms, her face pale as the officers turned their flashlights on her. "Emily Johnson?" one officer asked. Her lips parted but no sound came out. She clutched the baby tighter, her eyes darting to Harold. "Tell them," I said, my voice cutting through the silence. "Tell them how long you've known. Tell them how you plan to take my home, my savings, my life, and erase me like I was nothing." Emily's eyes filled with tears. For a moment I thought she might deny it. But then her shoulders slumped. "He promised me," she whispered. "He promised it would all be mine." The words hung heavy in the room. The officers exchanged a look. One of them stepped toward Harold. "Sir, I think you'd better come with us." Harold's face twisted, rage spilling out at last. "You think you can do this to me? You think you can destroy everything I built?" His eyes snapped to me, blazing with fury. "You'll regret this, Margaret. You'll regret it until the day you die." I straightened my spine, gripping my cane like a scepter. For the first time in decades, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel weak. "No, Harold," I said firmly. "The only thing I regret is wasting my life on you." The officers moved in, pulling Harold's arms behind his back. He struggled, shouting, but the sound faded beneath the click of handcuffs. Emily sobbed quietly, holding the baby. She didn't look at me. As Harold was led out into the flashing lights, I felt something shift inside me. The weight of decades lifted from my shoulders. For the first time in years I could breathe. Daniel placed a hand gently on my shoulder. "You did it," he said softly. I nodded, tears filling my eyes. "No," I whispered. "I survived it. Now I'll live." The officers carried Harold away into the night. The red and blue lights faded as the cars pulled out of the driveway. Silence returned, but it wasn't the suffocating silence of fear. It was peace. I stood in my ransacked living room, the broken door swinging gently in the breeze, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom.